Ruchat Shekhinah, who grounds me. Ruchat Shekhinah, who reminds me that I know. Ruchat Shekhinah, who guides me. Ruchat Shekhinah, who gives me courage to let go. Ruchat Shekhinah, who grounds me. Ruchat Shekhinah, who reminds me that I know. Ruchat Shekhinah, who guides me. Ruchat Shekhinah, who gives us courage to let go. Ruchat Shekhinah, blessed are you who dwells within and around and between. We give great thanks and praise for our aliveness and for all that has been woven that we might come together this day. I offer my respects to the Osage and Haudenosaunee people and extend that respect to the indigenous peoples of all the lands inhabited by all who gather here. We also give thanks and welcome our bright and benevolent ancestors and offer our praise and gratitude to the elements, to the seasons, to the more than human world that is our kin. Shavua Tov, everybody. I am Kohenet Keshira, haLev, Fife, and it is such a pleasure to be back here with you once again today. We are now in the third week of the Shofar project, blowing shofar each day to awaken ourselves ever more to the work of this month of Elul, our time of preparation for the year ahead. Under normal circumstances, this month of Elul, an acronym for Ani Ledodi V'Dodi Li, I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. This would be a time of bringing ourselves into greater connection with the beloved, reacquainting ourselves, preparing to make teshuvah and enter through the gates. And while hopefully this is what's happening in this month of Elul, there's more, because this is not an ordinary year. In addition to all of our preparations, we are also underway in gearing up for the Shemitah, this year of release, which begins on Rosh Hashanah. This week, we are exploring release as it relates specifically to relationships with one another. Both in Torah and in this week's essay, we read about the imperative to release debts, to let go of the expectation of someone paying us back, or in some cases, to be released of the expectation that we might repay. It is powerful to think about how equity could be realized through occasional debt relief, but this is not just about dollars and cents. It's about what they signify. Those of us who have the resources to lend are in fact on one end of a power dynamic. And those of us who have taken on debt, whether to advance or simply survive, are on the other end. And truth be told, here in the West, many of us are a yes and, because leveraging what we have for the sake of having more is the American way. So this week we get to ask ourselves, what might it feel like to go back to square one periodically? To find ourselves on a level playing field where all things are possible again, where we are not bound by financial agreement, but by human obligation to one another. When I think about the paradigm shift from financial ladder to web, I begin to see why we might be commanded to do such a thing every 7 years. When co-teaching about the Shemitah a few months ago, there was a lively thread of discussion about how the Shemitah, at the end of the day, serves to remind us that none of it is ours. That part of the power of the year ahead is that it strips away some of our comfort for the sake of restoring balance. For when we cannot exercise our sense of dominion over, and we are released from being at the mercy of, we are free to return to balanced relationship, not without interdependency, but without the power dynamics that we have become so accustomed to. This paradigm shift might initially make us feel unsettled because it lacks control. However, what we are trading for control and excess is instead a chance to strengthen our emunah, our faith, and deepen our bitachon, our trust. And perhaps this is one of the reasons why we do this periodically, to be reminded that none of it belongs to us. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. We aren't entitled to one another. We belong to one another. And dignity is a fundament and should be a fundament of our relationships. If we let this sink in, it might serve to humble us. Humble comes from the word humus, meaning earth. And I believe this whole Shemitah exercise brings us back down to the earth, connects us more deeply with the planet and with its inhabitants. In a couple of minutes, we'll enter into our sit. We'll allow all of the feelings, all of the thoughts to arise and simply be. At first blush, it might seem that release and relaxation are the same thing. But in actual fact, sometimes letting go isn't that easy. Releasing, in fact, can take effort. So as a prelude to our stillness, let's consider the teaching of Deuteronomy, which describes the release of debt as tashmet yadcha, releasing one's hand. So I invite you now to look at your hands. Look at them in their natural position. Are you with hands open, palms up and open to receive, or maybe palms down at rest? Are your hands closed, holding on, or perhaps clenched or gripping? However they are, I invite you to open them gently. You might notice that in their most relaxed state, your fingers are slightly curled. Your hand is not entirely open, and you may need to exert a little bit of effort to fully open. This is a reminder to us that it is a discipline to be entirely open and ready to release. It's not our natural state. So let's take a few deep breaths together and settle into our bodies. Allow our hands to be as they are. Maybe a gentle exertion to open them, but not a strain. And let's take these minutes ahead to see what arises when we put these questions before us. Where in our lives do we benefit from relationships where the power is disproportionately in our favor? Where do we seek to exert influence or control, knowingly or subtly? What do we gain by remaining in control? What might we gain by letting go control? And where are there relationships where we feel endless indebtedness to another? What is the impact on our souls and on our psyches? What would relief feel like in our bodies? I invite you now to breathe into this space, to allow whatever arises to simply be. Release, release, release. Ruchat Shekhinah, who grounds me. Ruchat Shekhinah, who reminds me that I know. Ruchat Shekhinah, who guides me. Ruchat Shekhinah, who gives me courage to let go. As we move into this week of release and relationship, let us be untangled from that which holds us in place. In the year ahead, may dynamics of debt dissolve. May we find ourselves instead bound together through mutuality. May we be with the questions asked twice in two ways. What do I need to release? And what do I need to release? May we have the strength to let go, and may our release cultivate emunah, faith, and bitachon, trust, such that we recognize and remember that we are all part of the great web, not only in this year ahead, but for all times.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Kohenet Keshira haLev, Fife, for the gorgeous teaching and practice, which we seal as we are doing during the month of Elul with the sound of the shofar. And today, invite Richard Shiner to be our Baal Tekiyah as we, again, stay and close our eyes and attune ourselves to the sound of the shofar in this month of Elul, inviting us to release. Yasher Koach, Richard, thank you so much. Friends, we seal our practice as we always do by inviting those in mourning, observing yahrzeit, to add the name or names of those you are honoring, remembering today in the chat box if you'd like, either now or after Kaddish, and the rest of those of you who are not reciting Kaddish to be our witness and bring compassionate, kind attention and support to those who are, who I invite to rise with me in body or in spirit for Kaddish. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba, Yama, Dibra, Kirte, Yalich Malchute, Chayechon, Yomechon, Hayeh, Tefal Beit Israel. Ha'agala, Zman Karim, Imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Barach, Aram Lameh Amayah. Yitbarach Yishtabach Har Yitman Yitadar Al Shemei V'Riku Le'elam
Amin kol berchata, urata, shvachata, kamata, da'iran yama amen. Hey shlama rabba min shmaya, hayim aleinu v'yokol Yisrael, amen. Say shalom b'mama, ya'aseh shalom, leinu v'yokol Yisrael,
Amen. Amen. Friends, thanks as always for being with us today for our daily sit. Thanks to Kohenet Keshira haLev Fife. I'm putting a link to Keshira's website in the chat box, where you can get more information about Keshira and Keshira's offerings. And of course, thank you so much, Catherine Fisher, for sponsoring our practice today in honor of the birthday of our mutual friend and wonderful teacher, Rabbi Avi Winokur. Yom Huledet Sameach to you, Avi, and many more years in good health, and much joy to you today and always. And thanks to Adi Stein, as always, for holding our tech space with skill and grace. And to all of you for being here, for making this community of practice possible. We have an incredible lineup of teachers the rest of the week. Tomorrow will be led by Rabbi Shir Yaakov Fife. Wednesday by my colleague and friend, Rabbi Jonathan Slater. Thursday, Rabbi Jenny Solomon will join us from North Carolina. And on Friday, to sit into Shabbat, Rabbi Dorothy Richmond will lead us in practice. So wonderful teachers all week long. We hope you'll join us for one or all of those opportunities to practice together. For those who are able and would like to stay on for a few minutes of conversation with Keshira about that beautiful teaching for today and that practice, or to share reflections on what came up for you, you're invited to stay on. For those who cannot, we hope we'll see you tomorrow. Again, a reminder that our study with Jonathan Slater is at 11:30, and then our sit at 12:30 Eastern. Please join us for any or all of our sessions for the Shofar Project. If you do have a question, we invite you to put it in the chat box. For those of you who are leaving, be safe and well and dry for the rest of the day. And we hope to see you back here soon. And I see some questions are already coming in. Keshira, that was just beautiful. Thank you so much. Start to finish, just beautiful. I have a hard question, I think, which you're welcome to you're welcome to punt if you'd like. It came up for me actually when I was writing the essay for this week, and about translating the release of debt into emotional terms in our relationships, and dealing with issues of power and privilege and control, which you were speaking about so beautifully. I realized that, for when this is very clearly applicable when one is in a position of power, control, and privilege. But when one is not in a position of power, control, and privilege, the teaching to let go, to let go of grievance, to let go of indebtedness, right? I felt like that was challenging. And so actually in the essay, for those of you who read the essay, I thanks with I want to give credit to my sister-in-law, Rabbi Tamara Cohen, for this, that at least I try to emphasize that it does not mean relinquishing power or relinquishing legitimate grievance. So anyway, I was curious your take on that, because I don't know if you have one.
I'm going to parlay this question with Lori Kleinberg's question, the last in the chat. How do we reconcile letting go of control in a relationship and still have boundaries where we don't reveal all our vulnerabilities? I think those questions might be cousins of one another. And what comes to mind is a teaching of Prentice Hemphill, who is a teacher of somatics, who says that boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. That this idea of release, I think especially for those who have been on the margins, sometimes gives way to the sense of losing ourselves. If someone has caused harm, the imperative is not to go back to that same place and let ourselves be harmed again. I think the imperative is to not let ourselves become so burdened with the weight of all the harm over time that we become stuck in place. And so the question is not, how do we, my mom used to say, you can forgive, but we don't always forget. And remembering doesn't necessarily have to bring us back to that place of trauma or harm. That's the work of teshuvah, to bring ourselves back to a centered place where we can be with what has happened without letting it become us, without letting it solidify into our identities. Not easy, just saying. Oh wait, I can't hear you, Rabbi Mark.
Oh, that's because I was muted. I just think that's a incredibly sensitive and beautiful response to, it's a very challenging question. Lori's question, in silence today, it occurred to me that release may not be completely letting go or fully abandoning a debt, relationship, or feeling, but rather transforming from one position to a new one, letting go and letting God, that is doing differently. Would you please speak to this? So not abandoning the debt, relationship or feeling, but transforming from one position to a new one. Sounds like in keeping with what you just said. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
I think yes, similar. And also there was a question, let me just scroll up a little bit, that asks about the paradox of discipline and being open and able to release. So it's useful to start with what are we talking about when we say release? The etymology of the word release comes from making something lax again, releasing, letting go and letting things go back to how they might be in their natural state. When we're not holding a particular posture, we can release and find our way to what's natural. But it implies that there was a posture or way of being before whatever circumstance allowed us to be or forced us to be in a different way. So this idea of transforming from one position to another it can be somewhat of a relief. There's that kind of sense of relief. Some people say at the end of the semester, or at the end of a big project, or at the end of a big trip, we can kind of come back to ourselves in just a natural way of relaxation and release. But sometimes the release isn't easy. We might be holding tight to something, even if it's something that we don't want, or it's something that's causing us pain, because it serves us in some other way. So there's a paradox there which says, okay, I'm going to let go of this thing. I might have to also let go of something that has served me. And I like to remember that in the moments when it's hard to consider giving up that thing, I don't have to actually consider and make the decision, because every 7 years we are commanded or invited or made space to do that thing.
Would you speak more about the process of releasing emotionally? Let's think about that.
I could speak a lot more about the process of letting go emotionally. I'll offer the wisdom that I learned in the renewal movement, this idea of the 4 worlds, that our bodies, our hearts, our minds, and our souls, what happens in one world reverberates in all 4 worlds. So when it's hard for me to open my heart, when I feel a hardenedness, the best way in for me is to move my body, because when I loosen my body and I start to move around, something sometimes shifts inside my heart. Or if my thinking gets fixed and I'm insistent that it has to be this way, it's always been this way, I can drop into my heart and feel, what is the impact of keeping it this way for someone who doesn't benefit? Could I open up more compassion? And if there's a rush of compassion, it might serve to just move the thoughts around and rearrange them in my mind a little bit. So I would say the emotional release for me comes in shaking, laughing, crying, yawning. Those who are students of or practitioners of co-counseling will know those methodologies well. And even if you're not, I always encourage my students and my family and my friends, when the tears come, let them come. Our tears are holy. They're clearing the way, they're making space, they're washing away, and we don't have to stifle them. And same with laughter, let it come.
Lori Zinker always has good questions. Can you distinguish, or is there a differentiation between heart and soul?
I think it's a yes, and there might be some distinction, but they are both so integrated as parts of us. It's hard to separate them one from another. I can say I feel my heart in a particular place, and I feel my soul in a different kind of place, and their movement is evoked by different things. And the way that I know that is that sometimes I hear a song and I say it made my heart smile. And sometimes I hear a song and I say it was a balm to my soul. It's not a cognitive distinction. It's just it's an observation of what's happening internally.
A question apropos historic trauma. Can you say more about returning / remembering without repeating?
trauma is so much at the heart of this dance of returning and remembering without repeating. And I think, as simplistic as it sounds, it's sometimes useful to remind ourselves, even out loud, this moment is not that moment. Sometimes when my anxiety kicks up, I have to remind myself, this place might smell like that place, but this moment is not that moment. In this moment, I'm okay. And when I can come back to myself and I start to feel that groundedness, I'm in my body fully, I'm able to remember or be with something that has happened in the past without inhabiting that place again. And if I can't, then sometimes it's even just useful to name, I'm having a trauma response to this. It may be hard for me to interact with this right now, or I can't talk about this right now, but I'm willing to try again another time in another moment, and to be gentle with ourselves.
Yeah. There's a comment that I guess so there's an implicit question here from Susan, struggling with major challenges, wondering how to have a sense of release. And it makes actually that comment in question is making me think about what you said, Keshira, about, I don't remember exactly how you put it, but it was, it's sort of this trade-off of where we let go of control and I don't remember what else you said, maybe power, in exchange for growing in emunah and bitachon, in faith and trust. When things are not, when there's legitimate concern for anxiety, right? I guess what we're talking about, whether it's health related or financial or like, it's a tough practice, with that. So maybe, I don't know if you want to say a few words to that about those for whom it's, there are good reasons why it's a struggle.
Yes. Susan, first Shamati, and thank you for bringing yourself and your vulnerability to us today. As I'm reading what you share, what comes to my mind is that there's a reason why the Shemitah is not, the imperative is not just for everyone to every 7 years, when you get around to it, do this thing. There's a beset time when we all have to do it together. Because if we do it at different times, the impact is not as great. And what Susan is sharing really gives us an insight into what does it mean to be a person who's indebted. How does one release when the others around are not also making that motion, right? If we, when I was a little kid at summer camp doing a tug of war, they used to say to us, when it's evident that your team is going to lose, take your hands off the rope, right? So that you don't get rope burn. And so there's a reason why as soon as the tug of war is over and the mark crosses the line, everybody puts their hands up and the rope falls. Otherwise, the one who's still holding might get rope burn or might be dragged. So there is this sense that we have to intuit one another, and we have to be willing to practice this exercise of opening our hands a little bit more, of remembering what it was like to have them be completely open, and to do that together.
Oh, what a fantastic metaphor. That's really great. It's really great. Then finally, we just have another couple of minutes from Leah. How do I release when I've done harm to someone close? I think what comes up for me with that is when I think about, okay, when I've harmed somebody close, I think what I would like to release is the shame that I may experience around that, and allow the guilt, the healthy guilt part, guide me towards making repair, so that I can actually face that, my capacity to harm others. That's my take on that. I don't know if you got to give a response to that.
Yeah, I think mine is similar, which is that when I've done harm to someone, the thing I'm often holding is the idea that the relationship can never return, that the person won't forgive me. And so I take that thing that I'm holding and I put it between us. And in some way, I ensure that the relationship will never be the same. because I'm holding myself at a distance in order to avoid being back in that place of shame and guilt. So that release, exactly what you said, Rabbi Mark.
Yeah. Also, I guess we're like releasing our hope or expectation to be forgiven by the other, which lies beyond our control, right? Just doing our part to make a tikkun, to make a repair, to do our best, right? But we cannot control whether we will get the forgiveness from the other, and then we have to let go of that too. It's another piece. All of this is, of course, this is where the Shemitah and getting ready for the Yamim Noraim, of course, go hand in hand. Okay, we're at time. I was going to ask you to say a little bit more about being a Kohenet and about the Institute next time. Stay tuned.
But
Next time.
I just want to close out by saying, we have this month to do this release work, and I can feel the spiraling and the unfurling and the releasing, and what a blessing it is to have this whole year to complete and to just release and continue to shed together. So thanks for having me here.
It's our blessing. Amen to your teaching and blessing. Catherine, thank you so much for sponsoring. Avi, happy birthday. Adi, thank you as always. Most of all, thanks to all of you. Hope you can join us tomorrow for practice at the same time and for Torah study with Jonathan Slater. Many blessings to you all for the practice of Shemitah as we move towards 5782.